Welcome, everybody. With me today, I have the infamous, the wonderful, the genius, the maker of all things magic, bfredl. Bfredl, why don't you say hello?
Hello.
Pretty excited to just do a little bit of a chat, sort of about some features that we'd sort of like to see inside of neovim going forward. None of
Mm.
these are necessarily a promise for the next release or anything like that. This is just sort of us talking and giving you insight into the wonderful world that's inside bfredl's head, and
Yeah,
just taking a peek.
we just make promises, but we don't promise to keep them.
Yeah, now we just chat and we'll see what
Yeah,
happens. So
yeah, sure.
all right, so with that, I mean, I think I've got one that I'm excited for that maybe we can
Mm.
just chat about. One of the
Yeah.
ones that I'm pretty excited about that's at least on the horizon is anti-conceal. You want to chat a little bit about what you mean when you say anti-conceal?
Yeah, that sort of was just like a joke initially, but it's
Yeah.
also a good name because literally what Vim can do is it can take a screen line and
Mm-hmm.
make it smaller by removing some unnecessary parts.
Right,
So
which
when
is
I
called
say
conceal. Like that's
yeah,
the feature name. Yep.
yeah, that makes sense. So when I
Mm-hmm.
say anti-conceal, I mean I want to extend it so the replacement text can be bigger than the buffer text, and that
Yeah.
means that the line can actually get bigger. So
Right.
that's why I call it anti-conceal because you see
Yeah.
more things.
Yeah. Totally. What's
And
Yeah? Go ahead.
sorry, and sort of the problem is you can already see this with conceal if you enable line wrapping. So you
Mm.
see your line in the buffer, it wraps to 2 3 screen lines,
Yeah.
and then you say, oh, I can enable conceal and get rid of all this noise I don't need,
Mm-hmm.
but then the line will not unwrap because there is a good reason for this,
Right.
which is because if you move the cursor up and down, Vim will show you the full line if you try to edit
Right.
the cursor line.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Vim doesn't really like that sort of the size of the buffer would change if you move the cursor,
Right.
because that will make that will make things a big mess.
Yeah.
So what we will need to do is to either we will say that this new extended conceal slash anti-conceal that it will skip over this feature, so it will not care what the cursor is,
Right.
or that we somehow because we can do that's will be work. Then we could like reuse some of this logic from virtual lines,
Right. Right.
which already enables us to make the buffer take bigger space vertically,
Yep.
and also extended that to make it take smaller space wouldn't be a big thing.
Yeah.
So if we just say that this will no longer depend on the cursor position, I
Right.
mean that will be quite reasonable.
Yeah.
The only thing we need to do with that is to figure out this is another meme which is called
Yeah.
bogus calls, which is how neovim and vim implements conceal internally.
Yeah.
And it's the mechanism that makes sure that even if you conceal stuff,
Yeah.
it will add some columns that are not there, really, they are bogus. So
Right.
you will still get the exact same line wraps.
Yeah.
And we need to battle that to be able to say that, oh no, we will actually want the wrapping to change.
Yeah. Yeah, battle I think is the right word. I remember
Yeah.
feeling that way working through Lua auto commands, and it definitely
Yeah.
felt like a battle
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I mean, I think the sort of compromises that you're talking about there make sense anyways, that don't make sense for regular conceal because there's no text to edit, right? So that's like the difficulty for conceal, right? Is you like take some text and you smush it down to something smaller. Well, what if you still want to put your cursor inside of there? That
Yeah.
like makes sense, hypothetically that you could want to do that. But then for
Yeah.
anti-conceal, it's like there is no space there. So it kind of makes sense that maybe we won't
Yeah.
need to care where the cursor is.
And then if we want to carry the price of extra redraws, we can do that as well. I mean,
Right.
so it's like, in the end, it's like what the plugin wants. And also, I also had this, there was a nice thread in the Vim repository where they said that oh, neovim users typically have faster computers than Vim users did 20 years ago. So
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
we
that's
can
true.
we can pay the price of making things more expensive
Yes.
if we want to.
Yeah, we do.
We still have some marginal until we hit like the cost of making thing a big HTML document with everything in JavaScript. I'm just saying
Right.
that.
Yes. Right. There is some range between
Yeah.
literally just painting characters in a terminal versus what most people are currently like editing
Yeah.
with today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or for example, like this video call.
Yeah. There is some
Yeah.
headroom, and
Right.
we can choose where we choose to pay the cost.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and just for, people's sort of imaginations of the things that we could do, I know one of the main features people want this for is so that like when you're typing, you can, and you're inside of like function to like function parentheses, we can show like the type hint for that. Or we can do, for example, I know in Rust, they have the inlay hints, and you could show the inlay hints sort of like along the line, inside of the line, rather like at the end of the line, which is the current strategy that we're able to do. So I think it enables lots of really cool features.
Yeah, that's really nice with all this fancy modern language with type interference, where you can just type. You don't need to type out the types, but you still might want to see the types.
Right. Especially like when you have, on some Rust thing and you have like 8 lines of iterators or something, it's maybe a little bit hard to tell somewhere in the middle. Yeah, totally. Are there any other features that you'd sort of be excited about for anti-conceal, or are those did I already cover the ones that you're most interested in?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, the hard part is to fix the basic implementation.
Totally.
And once that is done, it's not our problem anymore. It's the problem of plugins to try to make fancy stuff. And then they can get back to us like, oh, it will be cool if we also can do this. And then we keep discussing.
One that just occurred in my mind would be like if you're in a git commit message and you type like, you're closing this issue, we could show, in line with anti-conceal, like the name of that issue or something like that would be cool. Like that would be a cool plugin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay. Anything else you want to mention for anti-conceal, or you want to blow our mind with some other feature? I just wanted to talk about that one because it's exciting for me.
Yeah, but I think I mentioned the concerns that exist in core, and that's totally my turf.
Yeah,
and but something that's is as a bit related is to because even highlight ranges are not fully implemented yet. It's like we say that you can highlight like a range between 2 buffer positions.
Yeah,
but it's really. Wait, it's saying we have some connection issues. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, so whatever. So we say that you can highlight any range, but we only guarantee it will work if you're highlighting a range within a line, either within a line or actually between 2 neighboring lines. That's also guaranteed to work.
Yeah.
But so what I want to do is to fully implement this concept called X range, which means that because an X mark is just like a position, you can set the
just
position
one.
and you can query the position.
Yep.
Well, an X range, it also has the property, if you have like a range from say line 10 to line 100, then you can be on line 50, and then you can ask like, what are all the ranges that I am inside right now?
Totally.
And answer that question quickly. And that logic is not fully implemented yet.
Yeah.
So that is some old pile of code which is like half working. I need to get it through and fix all the tricky edge cases that mess things up. But my hope is that together with anti-conceal, that will be like it will make sense to make it if we can do this in 0.8, because then sort of this entire X mark / decoration feature, it will be. It will never be finished because we obviously add more stuff, but it will at least fulfill sort of the original vision I had when I started working on it.
Yeah, totally. I think even just having those kinds of ranges and other stuff working well, I think will enable other interesting kinds of kinds of ideas with interacting with the buffer. I mean,
Yeah.
I've played around with before some ideas about, basically I've like taken test output, I've parsed the text output, and I can put it into a buffer, and I like put X marks around the spots where like each test sort of is, and I can do things like, minimize or expand that without actually using folds, just like by actually changing the buffer, because I want to do something like live. I don't want it to actually be in the buffer. And some of those things I think would be cool to think about how you could start doing those with X ranges to say, oh, I'm within this range, collapse everything or open this up or whatever.
Yeah, that will be like a stretch goal to fully integrate this conceal feature with fold feature, which really is the same thing. It's just that folds are vertical and conceal are horizontal. So, and even also, I think Tito has been thinking a lot about this, how to make folds.
Folds have been on Tito's radar for like, it feels like forever. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. I think another one that I've sort of seen some chatter about throughout the issues is the idea of sort of completely separating the TUI and some of the logic there. I don't know if that's anything you want to chat about.
Yeah, sure. That's something I have been started to work a bit even before the release. So just getting some part of the infrastructure to sort of slowly merge into core. Because I can tell that the original story of this is actually a Google Summer of Code project by a very bright student called Praveen. So we went through the summer of 2019, and we basically went through all the UI code in neovim and like asked the question, what will we need to change to make this happen? And then in the end, he actually made a working prototype. So his part of the work was really done then. So it's more like I'm been too busy with other stuff and with life to get to it. But now
you're
this is
doing a PhD, right? I heard. We've heard of that before. It seems like your PhD's in neovim, but I heard it's not. So that's kind of interesting.
we will see what happens with that. But anyway, I'm actually I have merged some of the foundational pieces. But the end goal, it actually goes, because I mean the first usual visible feature will be that you can have one neovim instance on a server, and then you can be connected to it from somewhere else. It will sort of be like a Tmux session, but you don't need Tmux because we'll sort of have that built in.
Yeah, all the Emacs people will cry because that's what they keep telling me neovim doesn't have. They're like, oh, well, you don't have Emacs daemon mode, and it'll be like, sorry, Emacs people. Now bfredl did it for us.
Well, I don't think they need to cry. I mean,
there's just a few people who I know will be in chat right at this moment who will say, "Oh, neovim doesn't have it." So I'm just getting ahead of them, the future them, in the future when they're watching us in the past. I know what's gonna happen.
No, I mean there is some interesting ideas from Emacs. I know it's a bit interesting because I've discussed with plugin developers that are both working on neovim and Emacs. So they will say that like obviously Emacs has more features with decorations. It's like you can make like only a part of a buffer editable or whatever. But neovim's implementation is actually a lot faster. If all you care about is just adding highlights and this limited virtual text, which it cannot conceal yet, but you can sort of annotate the buffer with jump marks and whatever. And that is already a lot faster than Emacs. So but still Emacs is still more featureful. So it's like I think I mean competition between open source software it's also like a form of collaboration and just
it's fun
sharing good ideas.
It's like playing basketball against your friends or something, right? Like you're having fun. And
But with this thing with two-way attach,
Yeah.
what this will enable is to just simplify a lot of the code internally, how the UI works in neovim,
Right.
because now I think Taruda, who originally started neovim, and in particular he did a lot of work on the initial UI refactor, which was very important to get things started. But the thing here, I think the way he envisioned things things to work more like Vim are. So you will embed like Vim as a library, and then you will basically works like a base class in C++ with virtual methods. Just that we re-implemented in C, because that's what we C developers do. We just re-implement things from the ground up.
Yep.
So, but I want to change that, so we will have a neovim server part, which the only way it can handle UI is to send remote process machines, and then we can just simplify things a lot, because there will be no need for virtualization or anything. So it will just so basically we have it's like a babushka, of modules containing modules, basically. So we first have like the screen, and inside the screen we have this module called the grid, which should be a separate file, but it's not. And inside that we have the UI layer, and then inside that we have the UI bridge, and then inside that we have the remote UI. I mean, so we can simplify that a lot by if we finally make just the 2i work like any other UI. I mean, it will be a separate process. Communicating RPC messages, which, I mean, it's not a big deal, because in the end, whatever you UI, it will use RPC to your X server, whatever. So
but I think that'll also help with like, for all of the UIs that are currently external, like processes running, right? It's like, well, anything that the terminal one can do, we can like start making sure that it's super easy for them to do. And like, I think that's pretty exciting to think about for the future of neovim as well. And I think getting us closer and closer to sort of, especially like, I was actually just reading some of Taruda's stuff from earlier about this idea of turning neovim into just like a big state machine, right? Where you just basically input something and then it gives you the new state. We're pretty far away from that. But this is like one of the steps, I think, along the way to like making that happen. And it would be really cool to think about eventually having like neovim be a library that any text editor could embed to like perform Vim motions or something like that, right? Or like execute some Vim script plugin like surround.vim or something would be really cool.
Yeah, I know that's what the Oni project actually wanted. And I think unfortunately Brap is not working on that anymore because of financial reasons. But hopefully we can still do this. But it's a bit far ahead. So this,
it is,
that will not
it's far away for now. But I'm just saying, I think this is one of the things that sort of like each step we do along these ideas gets us one step closer to this possibility, which is exciting for the future of neovim, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of the future of neovim, are there any sort of like really like this isn't going to be 0.8, it probably won't be 0.9, but like other kinds of projects that you sort of have in mind for neovim that you just like want to talk about and just share with as not a promise, but just as ideas that are floating around in your head?
Well, I guess this won't be primarily be my work. But what we really want to do, possibly in 0.8 or maybe 0.9, is to bring tree-sitter closer to something we can say with a straight face that this is a stable feature, and maybe even it will be the default for a limited set of file types. So maybe realistically in 0.8 we could perhaps enable tree-sitter as the default highlighter for Lua. And that will bring And I would say that just Lua itself is quite a simple language. So you
Yeah.
just Lua, you wouldn't notice the difference maybe. But Tricitor has this nice idea called injections,
Yes.
which means that if you have a block of Vim script inside Lua, then without like much, I mean, you could do this with regexes. You can just nest regexes inside
Yes.
regexes endlessly.
Yeah.
But the trouble is when you do this in Vim script is Herodox, and then people will start to complain that, oh, but now all syntax highlighting is much slower because all these registers just run all the time.
Yeah.
But we can do the same in Tricitor, but basically no extra overhead because it will just say that, oh no, so like line 10 to 20 in this buffer, it's not Lua, it's Vim script. So let's just pass it over to a Vim script parser.
Yeah.
And there's basically no extra overhead.
Yeah.
Other than having a second parser running, because each parser will just parse different parts of the file.
Yeah.
So that's something I hope to get shipped as a default.
Yeah, that would be cool.
If not in 0.8, we will just work on it. But hopefully quite soon.
Yeah.
But still, in general, Tricitor it's like endless with the possibilities.
Yes.
So for a lot of things, you will still need a plugin, especially nvim Tricitor product, which has a really lot of cool things going on.
Yeah.
So if you want to support a lot of file types and a lot of features, you will still need this product. But I hope to start to integrate some of the most major stuff into core.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think maybe even, not this year, next year, but further down the line, we might be able to start doing things, especially as the Tricitor ecosystem matures, like including more parsers, just like we include other syntax files in core, right? We're not making a guarantee that every language will be there, but like maybe we could do the top 20 languages or something like that. Not this year or next, but maybe, we could work towards making that happen, which would be exciting.
I think we can cover Go and Rust and TypeScript, which is everything you need to be a professional editor.
Yeah, exactly. We'll wait to do C until the last one. We're trying to tell people you don't need to write this anymore. Speaking of not writing in C, what are your thoughts about other languages for neovim? A lot of people always ask me, when are we going to rewrite neovim in Rust? What's your thoughts, bfredl?
Yeah, we sort of get a lot of these questions. I mean, the first issue on this topic, they were just actually suggesting C++. It's like, oh, if you're already writing C, why don't you use C++? And then we have a long discussions like, are we gonna use classes? Are we gonna use templates? Are we gonna use virtual method? And we eventually settled on a subset of C++, which is called C. Well, I'm joking. It's not really. It's not formally a subset, but you get my point.
Yes, I know the joke.
We chose to do nothing at the point. We say we don't completely exclude this possibility, but for now, let's instead focus on implementing more things in Lua, and then we maintain the C code, and then we write some C code to enable magic to happen in Lua.
Yeah.
And then the next iteration, it was Rust, as you said. And we sort of had the same feeling then that maybe it would be like an improvement. I mean, in some sense, with all these bugs, especially when dealing with Unicode, there is always bugs creeping up.
Yep.
So, but we sort of felt that, but then we will need to pay by there will be like a complexity penalty of making the build system more complicated.
Yeah.
And I think this was even a bit time ahead before even Firefox. With Rust mandatory, so it was like, are the distro people gonna hate us even more than they already do?
Yeah.
And
we already get in enough trouble for with the distro people. I don't know anything about being a distro maintainer. All I know is that I always choose whatever the opposite is of what they wanted to do, and then I have to fix it, which makes sense because I'm dumb.
Yeah, it's mostly this thing that we are using this language called Lua, but we are not using the Lua implementation of Lua. We are using LuaJIT.
Yes.
And we just say that, like, LuaJIT, this is just a big pile of C code and some assembly. A big pile of C code that our C code includes. And then we ship a script which just builds the C code, and it builds our C code, and then it just links everything together. And it becomes an executable, and life is wonderful. And then the distro people say that, but we want to use dynamic linking, and why can't we use just Lua 5.3? And it's like, this will make things complicated.
Yeah.
So we sort of try to compromise and make both of us equally unhappy.
I mean, they've got valid concerns. They're just concerns that I didn't know that they existed before we were doing some things.
No, I mean, a lot of the concerns are like, it's like perfectly fair, but then LuaJIT has this thing that they don't believe in releases. They just put out code.
Right.
And for us, it's not a problem. We just say that, we will pull in this code and build it.
Yeah.
But then some distro people says like, what, should we ship a package that is just a git commit? This is insane.
Yeah.
So
well, and it really throws people off too. That like,
and for good reason, good reasons. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with them. It's just that,
especially, but like it also confuses people because like Lua 5.1, it seems like to someone who's not familiar with Lua, you're like, well, why aren't you guys just using 5.4? Come on, guys, get with the times. It's Lua 5.4. You're like, no, you don't understand. They're just releasing random versions and calling it 5 dot something. Like that's not what you think it is.
Yeah, it's more comparable to Python 2 and Python 3.
Yes, exactly.
Except that, imagine if Python 2 was magically 10 times faster than Python 3 at the same time.
Yes,
and when Python is not. I mean, there's no reason not to use Python 3. But just imagine some sort of dusty pixie magic just made Python 2 always 10 times faster than Python 3.
Yes.
Then, of course, the trade-off will be completely different.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
But so on the topic then of other languages, I mean, in the past, I know you and I have chatted about Zig as a possibility. Maybe there's more ideas floating around about Rust. Do you feel that...
Yeah, that's also interesting because I mean, I've expressed a lot of interest in Sig.
Yeah.
I mean, just not related to even the neovim project. It's like this is just a nice language that I want to use.
Yeah.
And then everyone starts to ask me, so you like this language? So why are you not just rewriting neovim in Sig?
Yeah.
I always answer, we should maybe wait until Sig itself actually is stable until we even start to consider this question. And
that
then people,
fair.
but TJ, then people interpret it. So bfredl says that once Sig is 1.0, they will immediately start rewriting everything in Sig, which is not exactly what I said, but you could sort of read off this implication if you really want to.
It's not exactly what you said, but it's also not exactly what you said.
I mean, it could also not be wrong.
Right, yeah. I think Zig provides some interesting opportunities in like for neovim land because of the C and other aspects, but we'll have to see what happens.
And one thing I will say about Zig that I will say about it compared to Rust, at least how Rust is today, because of course when Sig 1.0 is out, we need to compare that with the state Rust in at that point of time.
True.
But still, at this point, what Sig offers is a much easier way to import C declarations. So you can basically just import C headers into your Sig program, and you can also export C headers from, if you implement things in Sig, you can export a static or dynamic library that you can just use in C together with the header to use it.
Yeah.
So that is for the moment more seamless in Sig, I would say, than any like comparable language.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's a lot of other things. But that's like a standard feature to me because C, we use this thing called C. It's like sort of sucks, but if we want to use something else, we still want to interact with this big pile of C that we have maintained and we have sort of fixed a lot of the issues already.
Right, and I think people don't really generally just have a very good appreciation for like what it means to have code that's been run like a billion times, like maybe literally billions of times. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have to think about that if that's reasonable to think. But a lot of times, right? And it does the thing that people expect it to do. And part of neovim's sort of like premise, right, is that it's still Vim, right? So we don't want to spend 40 years re-implementing like every motion or something like that, right? And every aspect, we want to like still have those things be used. And even though Vim patching is still hard, but we have some people who are just absolute robots at it, and I am amazed by them.
And it's still absolutely worthwhile, because if
Yeah.
Vim implements something cool, then of course we want it. And
Right.
there should be no like prestige. It doesn't really matter if Vim or we implement something first.
Right.
The point is we should just share all these awesome features
Right.
with each other if we can. So
Yeah, so ditching C or implementing something that requires us to like fundamentally change a lot of the ways that we like interact, or that the code is structured, like which Rust sometimes would make you do, for example, then that like is a huge cost to us. Like every time Vim does something, or every time we'd like to upstream something back to Vim, those are all like things that I think people miss out when they ask if we're just going to switch to Rust tomorrow, which I don't think that we're going to tomorrow, but maybe someday. We'll see.
yeah.
I personally wouldn't be opposed to having some other language that like certain other features are implemented that is like typed and compiled, right? Like I love Lua, but I don't necessarily want to build everything in Lua. So
No, and we don't want to build everything in, because what you have now is something is just tedious to write manually in C.
Yep.
So we basically use Lua as a second preprocessor,
Right.
like as a like our, instead of having like a proper template system, we just write Lua code which is out with C code, which is. It's at the same time, it's awesome and horrible at the same time.
It's one of those things where the first time you're like trying to figure out, you're like poking around for something, you're wondering where this is defined, and then you find this like generated file, and you're like, oh, that's weird. Where's that generated file coming from? And then you like find the Lua file that Zix wrote for it like 5 years ago that like magically understands everything. You're like, wow, Zix is just on another programmer level from the rest of us mortals, you know?
And then even some Lua code, we are like implementing 20% of a C parser in Lua. I mean, still we're using LPEG, so it's not from scratch, but still it's like we can parse 95% of declarations and then extract informations to implement like
to be fair though. Right, like that's already happening in C indent too. So it wasn't there was precedent.
I was going to say the other way around. We shouldn't make too much fun of Vim from having C indent, because we are also doing
right. There's precedent. We're just following in the same tradition.
Yeah, we are following. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, so
it's a good tradition.
Yeah, so I guess to summarize the answer to that question though, no super formal or expedited plans for new languages. We're going to keep on doing a lot of the same stuff we're doing, at least for a bit, at least for a bit.
Nothing I will say here is like a formal promise. It's like,
of course.
And I would say
that we're switching to Zig.
And once it's in like a formal document, like the roadmap, then it's formally a promise. Yeah. But it's not formally reality. It's just like we can still break
like that.
We can still break those promises.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. I think then sort of to just wrap up where we're at, is there any other things that you're really excited about, either about this release or that's upcoming that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I'm just sort of generally excited about the level of contribution from both very long-time contributions, but also very like recent contributors who has contributed at less than like a year or even half a year, and they are already doing very deep going changes. So one shout out is this global status bar feature that we landed in 0.7 by a guy. Is his name Famu?
Yeah, we're gonna interview him, and it's probably gonna play right after this interview.
Yeah, and it's impressive how quickly we can help people to get up to speed and dig
Yeah,
quite deeply in the code base.
totally.
Because if it was just like a few, I mean, we are a bunch of people that has hang around for
Yeah.
like almost 10 years now, but
Yeah.
we don't want to be just Bram, but 5 Brams. We want
Right.
still we want this product to keep growing and keep growing in contributors.
Yeah.
So just from the general level of features in 0.7, which was done by people from, I would say, from less that have been around for less than 2 years. It's quite
Right.
mind-boggling if you just look through the change list of all the headline features.
Yeah.
Who has done a lot of stuff? So
Yeah.
I'm generally very enthusiastic and hopeful for the project, not for the things, just the things that I care about, but also
Yeah.
what all this big crew of contributors are caring about.
Yeah. Which I think it was really exciting to me. Why I'm super pumped to like
Yeah.
host these like release
Yeah.
parties and be like, hey everybody, look, it wasn't like just one of us, which is totally fine if that's how a project wants to do things. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like exciting that we have all these people who are like, yeah, I'm gonna try and like implement this feature, and then it actually happens. It's just so cool to see. And yeah, I think that's a great way for us to sort of wrap up this segment. We're excited for the future of NeoVim, not just because of what we're doing, but because of what all of you are doing. You know, so I think
Yeah.
that's really great. So I just want
And
to say,
if you want to contribute to nvim, don't hesitate to
True.
join our Matrix community, which I'm sure TJ will put out the links you
yeah,
need,
yep.
because you can do it.
We need to make some Uncle Sam bfredl posters. You know, I don't know if the Uncle Sam poster thing is known
Yeah.
outside the U.S. You know, but we want you. You know, someone out there,
Yeah.
someone out there in chat watching this in the future, please
Yeah.
make that and tag me on Twitter so we can start spamming it with people. So, yeah. All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap up the interview. Thanks, bfredl,
Yeah.
for your time.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate
Yeah.
it, and for all your contributions, and for just being such a pleasant person to work with in the community.
Well, the same to you, Jay.
Hey, thanks. All right, and
Yeah.
with that, we are all done. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers.